What architecture means to you, if you have to give one word?
If I have to choose one word, I would have to choose life.
You spoke about technology and future. You also believe technology is not only, or innovation is not only making something new, but also reinventing something old.
Well, I think architecture is definitely evolving with life. With new technologies, with new lifestyles, we create new architecture that matches it. We've seen architecture becoming conscious about affordability.
I also know you are a time traveler. You travel back in time, go to your projects, see how people are enjoying that. So tell us about your time travel.
The current moment is very important, but to make it significantly more important is to have a consciousness about being grateful for the past, of what you have learned, and then also having some audacity to project into the future.
So here I am with architect James Law, founder Cybertecture. He is here in India from Hong Kong, and it's so nice to meet you, James, here. We've always been in touch online, but to be finally meeting in person with you. So thank you for being here with us and talking to us. Directly asking you, getting into the what you have been, telling and you believe in is in architecture as, First of all, let me just quickly ask you what architecture means to you, if you have to give one word.
If I have to choose one word, I would have to choose life. I think architecture is life. Architecture organizes our life, prioritizes our life, guides us to a certain extent in life. So it's difficult to define, but in a way, I think it is very much connected to life.
Of course, it impacts us. We don't even realize, but it impacts everything in our life, the way we live, the way we work, probably the way we enjoy the spaces, we go for entertainment.
Absolutely.
It impacts all parts of our, aspects of our life. You also say that architecture is ever evolving because life is ever evolving. So you believe that architecture is also ever evolving. So how have you seen the evolution of architecture, probably going back 10 years?
Well, I think architecture is definitely evolving with life. With new technologies, with new lifestyles, we create new architecture that matches it. Sometimes we even create architecture that drives new change for people. I think it really reflects on many of our modern day concerns about change, about the environment, about having a home, having a city that we want to live and prosper in. So the architecture is in fact like a language or like a medium which is constantly being spoken, reformatted, and then new stories are told as our lives are changing every day. In the last 10 years, architecture has really, again, evolved very quickly. We've seen the advent of, a consciousness about sustainability.
Okay.
We've seen architecture becoming conscious about affordability.
Okay.
We've also seen architecture being very conscious about technology. And in many ways, architecture continues to project into the future as a kind of dynamic platform for, humanity to assess and organize ourselves in this ever-changing world. So it's a tremendously exciting field to be in. And I think it has the promise of doing a lot of good if we are able to evolve architecture in a way that would match what we need.
So technology, sustainability and affordability, these three biggest evolutions in architecture we have seen in last decades. And, as rightly said, by architecture you can tell a lot about a society, so that's what people say. You spoke about technology and future. You also believe technology is not only, or innovation is not only making something new, but also reinventing something old.
Correct.
So give me an example,
Yes.
how
Absolutely.
it's done.
We always think that we know everything and then anything new must be better than the old thing. But in fact, we really look at innovation and creativity. Many of the things, if not everything that we have done, it has been done before. Not only done by man, but also done by nature. Mm-hmm. And I think now we are coming to a stage where our technology is allowing us to learn and mimic nature. For a long time, you make a building and it is like a structure that is a little bit hard, it's very wasteful, and it consumes a lot of material. But now we are starting to have new designs of architecture that is actually, inspired by nature. Buildings that breathe, buildings that collect water, buildings that stores energy. And in a way, it is like a personal philosophy of mine, which is that architecture can be a second nature that is inspired by the fundamentals of nature. Mm-hmm. So, architecture is continuing to learn, sometimes, like you say, learn from the past, but then using the new materials and new technologies and the new strategies to deploy the great values of the past into a relevant one for the current and the future.
Any example that you might want to give, how old concepts were redefined in a modern way?
Sure. So, I think once upon a time when we were building, we were not concerned about the looks of the building, but we were concerned much more about the livability. And for example, having air and ventilation in a house, right? And today, in many modern architecture, we do not do that. We just rely on AC, and we just use energy to compensate for that. But now we see a new kind of era of sustainable architecture, which chooses materials and have shapes and forms and planning that is modern, but also has cross ventilation. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it is not going backwards, it is still moving forwards, but it's rediscovering that something as fundamentally original as cross-ventilation is as relevant to a modern architecture today as it was when it was first done. I really think that architecture is a little bit like having a conscience. When we lacking in conscience, we then become obsessed with a certain kind of shallow architecture. But then when we think back and have a conscience about our core values, we start to bring back those things into even a modern design. And I can really see that happening already in a lot of projects.
So it should be conscious architecture, not you want to create a landmark, not just for the sake of creating a landmark. It should not be that objective of your architecture. It should be the conscious architecture which can help, like you said, it should cross ventilation, natural lighting. That should be the objective.
Yes,
for the people inside.
I think, to realize that any architecture that I make myself, I know that it has a massive effect on people and on the environment. And whilst it can be iconic and wonderful for me personally visually, and probably for some other people visually, we have to remember that is just one aspect of the contribution to society. Looking brilliant, photogenic, iconic, just in that shallow way, is very short-lived. I mean, the people find it boring in a very short time. But if that architecture not only has those aesthetics, but also bring delight on a personal level, environmental level, relationship level over a long time, that is not just iconic architecture. That is fundamental architecture. Fantastic. So, for example, when we make a building for people to work, we are not just giving desk space to people just to go there and sit for 10 hours a day on the computer. We want people, when they come every day, they're proud to come to work. They're delighted to come to work. They see their colleagues, they see other companies, and then they have interaction. And then the spaces are also helping them have some balance in life, like take a break, have some fresh air, sit on the deck, and in the lobbies being able to relax and interact with other people. This is the architecture looking good, but also being good. And so just like when you have that kind of balance, you really feel it is good architecture.
That's right. That's what we were talking earlier. It impacts our life. It influences our life in even ways we do not even understand or know, and unconsciously.
Yeah.
And if people can enjoy that architecture, what better can that be?
Absolutely.
I also know you are a time traveler. You travel back in time, go to your projects, see how people are enjoying that.
Yeah.
You also go in future and see how things are going to be in future. So tell us about your time travel.
Yeah, so one thing I've really learned in my life and career is that the current moment is very important. But to make it significantly more important is to have a consciousness about being grateful for the past, of what you've learned, and then also having some audacity to project into the future. So as an architect, I love going back to the past, which is the projects I have made, and then I see the life of those buildings being lived by the people who use them, and to see how the neighborhood and the district has changed, not just because of my buildings, but also by other buildings. And then you learn a lot. You learn about, all the ideas that you had before, has it been validated? Or perhaps even some mistakes you made were wonderful mistakes that actually bring delight to people. Now, going back into the past makes you learn, and once you learn, you have the ammunition now to go into the future. So the next project you make is something that you can really accelerate that kind of effect, and you can take all of those ideas. And there's a constant going back and then going forwards, going back and going forwards. We should never forget that we finish a project and it's just finished and it's gone. It is not that. It is going to be there longer than you are. And to care and to learn about the life of the building is in a way a very rewarding thing for the architect, so that he can have more wisdom to take into the future. So that's my time traveling technique.
Okay, fantastic. Let me come to a criticism of yours. A lot of people say that your futuristic designs or cybertecture is quite outrageous, maybe unrealistic, maybe too much in future.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to that?
I accept it, actually. I certainly agree. Some of our proposals, I think at face value, is tremendously daunting and in particular maybe a little bit alien for people, and I accept that. But I think why I do that is because I really feel that fundamentally design has the capacity to reinvent, and whilst we may not be comfortable about the outcome of the future, we should still experiment to try to find it. If we don't, then we're very lost. We're kind of in a chaotic progress. I think once upon a time, when we look at the Taj Mahal, hundreds of years ago, when people saw that, they cannot believe such a massive building created out of marble can even be created. That's audacious, that's ridiculous, that's too expensive or whatever. But it was created. And ever since, it has changed the notion of that kind of architecture. Same for the pyramids, same for the Great Wall of China, and other iconic architecture. Modern ones are like Sydney Opera House.
Correct.
Why make an opera house with such expensive structure even so many years ago? Today we look at it and we can see that it is accepted, and then also it's inspired so many other things. And so, yes, my things may tend to be futuristic, but they're not futuristic for futuristic sake. They are a projection to trying to achieve tangible, real, positive results out of invention. And you may not accept my work, and I don't demand that at all, but you just have to see in daily life, you look at nature, you see how plants are growing, and you can never predict how they grow, but they always grow beautifully. I think it is just the same, that in the wonders of creativity, there are always going to be things that are unknown, but when they become fruition, they bring a level of delight that you would never expect to get from anything that is already seen or already accepted.
Correct. You need to dream big to make them true. Unless you don't dream big, you will not aspire to fulfill that.
Yeah, I think you say it's dream big, but I think it's to also dream in an infinite way. I think it's not necessarily about big ambition or big achievement, but it's about thinking infinitely, not to confine your thinking by the doctrines of what may be acceptable or only the things that you know. You keep trying to learn in order to further your boundaries of creativity. And as much as possible, I try to keep learning and then try to allow my creativity to stretch further. And that's why my projects are so scary for people.
Fantastic. Coming from you, now they understand, what you do, why you do. So lastly, I will not take too much of your time. Lastly, while a lot of your projects are in UAE, India, and maybe other Western countries, where people have money to spend, have money to think big scale architecture, starting from scratch, being quite ambitious as well, especially in UAE. But then there are underdeveloped countries, there are a lot of poorer countries where they need some kind of architecture, but probably they do not have the scale or the resources. How James Law can bring architecture to those areas?
Thank you. I think the impression people get certainly from a lot of my high-profile work are those projects which are, in these kind of very fast-moving, wealthy locations, and that's certainly true. They have supported me to execute some very big, bold ideas. However, I also have a lot of work which is less well known. But in fact, those less well-known projects are equally important to me, and some of the less well-known ones are actually very humble projects. They're humble for a reason, and exactly, I think, answers your question. And I think you allude to the fact that, it seems like James Law is only working in these, very progressive, wealthy places and not dealing with some of those fundamental, more humble issues. But that's not true. For example, with affordable housing, this is something that I am very passionate about. I come from a very wealthy city, Hong Kong, but Hong Kong also suffers from a huge affordable problem for housing, and many people are living in very unhygienic, inhumane spaces because they cannot afford the level of living that is being charged in Hong Kong. So we have worked on many projects where we explore this, including one called the O-Pod, which actually uses concrete water pipes to create small, affordable homes. And then we also work on other solutions like using modular container boxes to create fast architecture housing. And we've been building them in Hong Kong in support of charities and in support of NGOs to help with those housing. And these projects are just as important to me as the ones that seemingly make it on the covers of magazines or awards, because what drives our work is actually about people. And we cannot deny the fact that there are a lot of people who don't get access and cannot afford to get access to the high power architecture. But then we can still apply our creativity to find solutions for that. So we are doing quite a lot of that. Maybe 10-20% of our work is really in that sector of low cost, affordable housing, and other things like developing slightly new technologies for keeping people safe, keeping the environment safe, are all really kind of fundamental things which are important but not glamorous.
Right.
And we believe in that as well. So so please everybody please be generous to me. I do try my best to also help society.
So that's from James Law. He's not only about big scale, outrageous projects for wealthy countries, but he's also working on solutions for more affordable, where people need those kind of solutions. Like you mentioned about container houses, O-Pod houses. So these are certain solutions being developed by a well-known architect, which can be applied in any region, any area. You are working with charities. They can take it forward to many other countries where
Correct.
they need affordable housing. They
Correct.
need housing for people who
Correct.
cannot have an organized home.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
solutions are there,
Yeah.
and I hope by watching this video, a lot of people know about it
Sure.
and take it forward.
Yeah.
I also know you work with a lot of young children. You bring them to your office. You make them aware about architecture. You know how things are done. What's your message to these young children who, as of now, they don't even know what they want to do in life? But you're making them aware of something called architecture.
Yeah.
What's your message to these kids?
My message and why I carry out these kind of academies is that when you are young, you are unaware of the fact that you have, really quite amazing potential and talents. And given the right environment, given the right opportunities to be exposed to maybe design or architecture or technology, it really sparks their passion. It's almost like, in biological terms, stem cells. Stem cells are cells which can evolve into anything, but it just needs to have the spark to make them activate. And I was lucky because when I was 7 years old, I happened to see something that inspired me, and I immediately knew I wanted to be an architect, and I pursued it with a passion since a child. And I think I benefited from that greatly because it accelerated my progress into following my dreams. So these academies are opportunities for exposing these kids in an early stage they're in the environment of design, they're seniors doing this job, they're seeing projects being made. And sometimes they come to me and they say, oh, wow, that is so great. I can do that. I can do that. And I would love to do that. Then they are activated. And then they go to their parents and say, Mom and Dad, I know what I want to do now. I think I really want to be an architect, or I want to be an engineer, or I want to be a computer scientist. And they may be 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old. And then they start to plan their lives themselves.
Right,
Think
right.
about what college they want to go, what subject they want to study. And they have a purpose.
Right,
They
right.
know they're studying mathematics because they want to become a computer scientist, or they're studying art because they want to be a designer. And I think that is how we will improve the prospects and the talents of our next generation. So my message to them is that the future is bright. Light your passions, light your talents up so that as soon as possible, find your purpose. And hopefully that will bring you to a place that you never thought you can ever get to.
Fantastic. I think find your purpose, and if the earlier in life they find it, they have a road of success and creativity open for them. And I wish more people would do that, probably giving our young kids some platforms like this. So, but thank you so much,
Thank you.
James, for
Thank you
giving
for
us your
having me.
time and
Thank you.
sharing this wonderful, conversation with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Lot to learn from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.